Welcome to the Daily Agenda. It's nice and chilly out here in rural Nottinghamshire, but no snow. Those of you who've got it are either lucky or unlucky, depending on how you perceive it. However, talking of snow, and it seems to be snowing new ideas at this moment in time, or recycling ideas, doesn't it? I'm referring specifically to Paul Golding and Britain First with his sidekick Ashley Simon. Now, having done a very deep analysis of Britain First over the last few months and charted all of their twists and turns and magical U-turns, I think we can safely conclude that Mr. Golding, whilst he claims to be a nationalist, is not exactly on a nationalist track, is he? He's not adopting true nationalism. He's certainly deviated quite significantly from the nationalism of the British National Party, where he cut his teeth, so to speak, or ground them. More to the point, only ground them into. But probably civic nationalism, in actual fact. And the reason why I would say Britain First is not nationalist, it's definitely not ethno-nationalist. Golding himself admits it's not ethno-nationalist. He doesn't use the term ethno-nat, which is not entirely unusual because I never used the term ethno-nat until recently. And it was only done as a means to differentiate us from civ-nats. Well, we don't really need to use ethno-nat to differentiate ourselves from civ-nats. Civ-nats are just centre-right clowns, quite frankly. They're stillborn by design because the whole purpose of civic nationalism is to achieve absolutely nothing whilst heading off the real nationalism, which will achieve something. And we all know that it's funded and controlled by the Chosenites, don't we? And those who don't, well, they're obviously lying, deluded, or controlled by the Chosenites. Is that not a reasonable thing to say? I think it probably is, in truth. So why would I say Golding is not a nationalist? Well, if you actually analyse the last few videos that he's made, particularly those he's put on his YouTube channel, and he states there pretty much quite clearly that he's totally in bed with the centre-right. He sings the praises of the centre-right, and of course there's his very close alliance with Tommy Robinson, and they don't come any more milquetoast than Tommy, do they? The centre-left flag shagger, Israeli agent with an Irish passport. Not an awful lot of Britishness going on there at all, is there? And that's another issue with Golding, is that he himself is a Zionist. He supports Israel, he backs the Zionist cause, and of course that keeps the lucre, the filthy lucre, the shekels coming in, doesn't it? So in truth, Golding has most definitely done a massive departure from the policies of the British National Party, because you would never have seen John Tyndall or even Nick Griffin backing Zionist Israel and Zionism full stop. But of course this is what the centre-right does. It's just a Ziobot factory of impotent little shills who will never achieve anything other than delaying the inevitable victory of nationalism, and they know it will come because they are absolutely destined to fail, because they will never be allowed to succeed. That is the whole point of civic nationalism. It's a nonsense, and only fools have swallowed it. Now some people will say, oh no, absolutely not, Golding, and we'll get to Collet in a bit. Golding is he's a nationalist because he says he's a nationalist. You mean? Doesn't mean somebody's a nationalist just because they say they're a nationalist. Civic nationalist, most definitely. Nationalist, most definitely not. And people will say, oh well, he's writing with Ashley Simon a 90% white supermajority remigration policy. Well, why did that come about? Well, because earlier this year I wrote a 95% white supermajority remigration policy on the dailyagenda.co.uk and then put them to the test and said, well, let's see exactly how you intend to make this remigration imitation policy of yours work. And so now they've had to come up with one. It took them a while. It took me about 36 hours to write it. It took them months. Slow on the uptake. Or maybe they're just waiting for consent to actually do it. Because I can tell you for a fact, Britain First is controlled opposition. And these foolish people who say it's a natural successor to the British National Party, no, it most definitely is not. While some of the people in Britain First grew out of the British National Party, that's where the correlation begins and ends. Because Britain First is not the British National Party. It has adopted a stance which is very different than the BNP's in actual fact, particularly on the geopolitical machinations of Israel first. Israel first and foremost and at all times. And so, as I said, going back to the issue with Golding and his collusion with the British centre-right, well, just look at how he talks about ethno-nationalists. He very clearly hates them. And he's not particularly fond of nationalists. So if you want to call yourself ethno-nationalist or nationalist, that's entirely up to you. But I don't think there's any need to call yourself an ethno-nationalist unless you want to make that strict differentiation. It's your choice. But in truth, he's pretty much the same toxic mentality as Tommy. And obviously, it'd have to be as well, wouldn't he? Because otherwise he just wouldn't be accepted by the Zyobot factory. Because that's all Golding is. He's just another Zyobot. His ridiculous ranting with Muhammad Hijab and allowing himself to be seduced into some sort of sparring match. I mean, what type of political leader does such a thing? I mean, it's beyond childishness. It's the stuff of the playground, isn't it, quite frankly? The man is completely unfit to lead a political party of any description, including a CivNat outfit, which is what Britain First is. So those who keep saying, oh no, it's nationalist, you're wrong, it's not nationalist, it's civic nationalist. Don't forget the prefix civic nationalist. Civic nationalism. It is not nationalism, and it most definitely is not ethno-nationalism. It's a million miles away from ethno-nationalism. Well, I best be careful with my hand movements, hadn't I? Yes, yeah. As last night, some clown came onto the channel and said, oh, I think you're working for the globalists because you keep moving your hands around and making these strange hand signals. Oh my goodness, honestly. I don't know whether he was a clinically paranoid nationalist who snorted too much whiz or a centre-right crackjack who's sniffed too much coke. Take your pick, but that's exactly the type of clinical paranoia it produces. But anyway, yes, best not be careful with all these hand signals and hand waving and hi, you okay? Hello, if you do hello, okay, does that mean that you're a covert globalist? This is your covert globalist speaking. You see, I've got two hands and I'm wiggling my fingers. Must be. Perhaps I just chop my hands off. Would that be better? I'm sure some people would like to, especially the centre-right crackpots. That'd be good enough to do it, mind you, that is. But, they don't concentrate on fingering their own grifting. And that's another thing with Golding, absolutely massive, colossal grifter. Grifter par excellence. He puts Griffin to shame with the grifting. And he's very, very close to Tommy in terms of his success at grifting. And that man has grifted millions. Absolutely right. And what's he done with it over these years? Nothing. Achieved absolutely bugger all. Do they have any elected councillors at all? Do they actually do community politics? No, they do all the grandstanding, flag shagging rallies and parades like Tommy, don't they? It's like, and Golding himself says, I'm the only person who can come close to matching Tommy for getting a few thousand Muppets out on the street flying flags, isn't it, bruv? And that's pretty much the extent of it, isn't it? That is classic centre-right. There's no community politics going on. There's no grassroots community building at all whatsoever. I mean, I've seen Dean Neal going around the country, talking to people about the importance of building at the community level of grassroots community politics. And it's absolutely right. You see, most of these people were around Tommy and Golding. They just regard it as a day out, chance to get dressed up, put some flags on, etc., get smashed, smoke some weed, sniff some coke, and, well, there you go. That's the so-called state of modern nationalism, is it? Well, Tommy Robinson's never been a nationalist, we know that for a fact. He's completely fake, always has been, always will be. He is an Israeli agent with an Irish passport. I said that earlier, didn't I? Yeah, well, no harm in saying it again, is there? Or is there? Yeah, they might get upset about it. Might threaten to dox my location here in the rural Nottinghamshire countryside. It's top secret. You know, that's what all those hand signals are about, I promise you. You know, I'm signalling to my bodyguards over there. And there's a bodyguard behind there as well, you know. They're invisible bodyguards, like the Abrahamic God. They're invisible. No one's ever seen them. No one will ever see them, but they're there, believe me. They're there. You don't want to mess with these invisible bodyguards, believe me. They will strike you down with invisible powers. And if you believe that, you'll believe Paul Golding is a nationalist. Do you get my point? No one in nationalism is striking up such close friendships with the centre-right leadership and aping their policies and their agenda and their tactics and ranting about nationalists and ethno-nationalists in particular. There's a very obvious clue as to whether someone is a nationalist or not. It's when they start ranting about ethno-nationalists. That is the most obvious clue. That's how you determine if someone is actually captured. Controlled opposition, centre-right. And that's exactly what Paul Golding is. As for Ashley Simon, she's no one of any significance whatsoever, quite frankly. I mean, who is she? Is she just a decoration on his shoulder? That's the way she seems to me. She doesn't really seem to have anything of substance to say. No groundbreaking ideas or policies of any description. Nor does she have a magnetic personality. Well, neither does Golding, in actual fact. It's astonishing, isn't it? But then, you know, when they're being pumped and promoted and controlled behind the scenes, yes, absolutely. And then, of course, there's another very obvious clue. Christian fundamentalism. We spoke about that last night. We've spoken about it a few times, in actual fact, because it's infecting all of these right-wing groups. And it's never going to infect any group that I control, believe me. Never. We'll never allow it to happen. A nationalist party should not have a religious position. It should have a political position only, with a set of policies to back up that position. But this is not the case with the centre-right, is it? You know, they're all obsessed. And perhaps Britain First is the most obsessive of the lot, parading around like the Ku Klux Klan minus the robes with their white Christian crosses, marching down people's paths and ramming the cross in the face. I mean, look, I remember a guy in Cardiff, you know, anybody who's tempted to ram a cross in my face, you know, you will regret it, I promise you. There was a guy in Cardiff, and he'd harassed me, for a want of a better description, 2 or 3 days by aggressively pushing these Christian leaflets right into my face. And one particular morning, he did it again, and he was quite a tall guy. He thought he was some sort of big shot. And I basically got him by the wrist, ripped the leaflet out of his hand, and told him I'd ram it down his throat if he ever did it again. And to be a good little boy, a good little Christian, if there's such a thing. And this is the point I'm making with these people. They're ramming religion down people's throats, not political policies. You can't have a discussion with these people about anything remotely resembling remigration or even socioeconomics without them ranting about religion. Nobody wants it. Nobody wants to hear it. It's only the co-religionists, the co-fundamentalists that want to hear about this religious madness. And I keep making this point. It's just driving millions of people away. And so therefore we have to conclude these people know what they're doing, surely, that it's being done by design. It's actually deliberate, isn't it? So, in truth, look at the relationship. Let's mention Mark Collett, you know, an ethno-nationalist. So, Hitler's, in my opinion. But in truth, look at the vast void between Golding and Collett in terms of ethno-nationalism plays nationalism against civic nationalism. Well, if you look at it in real terms, Golding doesn't even come into the centre ground of nationalism. So if you've got ethno-nationalism there, and nationalism here, and the Civnat clowns here, then Golding's with the Civnat clowns. It's certain Britain First is certainly the most right-wing of the Civnat organisations, of the centre-right, but it is still centre-right. You know, the remigration policy is nothing more than a tactic. It's yet another deception, which the centre-right are absolutely notorious for. They come up with these imitation game policies. So they see what the nationalists are doing, and it's like, right, quick, we need to imitate these people to neutralise what they're doing. And that's all it is. And I guarantee you, at the Sutton Coalfield meeting, I don't even know what to call it. Is it a rally, a demo, a protest? My goodness, you know, a flag shagging parade? Who knows? Who cares, quite frankly? You know, they will try and portray themselves as being the pinnacle of nationalism. Well, in terms of remigration, they're not, are they? Because they can only come up with a 90% remigration, super majority. I came up with a 95% white super majority. In truth, I only wish I could come up with a 100% white supermajority and turn this country back to the way it was the day before Empire Windrush landed on these shores. That is where I stand. I'm sure Golding would have a rant and say, oh, he's an ethno-nationalist, because he's a Sivnat. Okay? That proves the point completely. And look at how he, dished the dirt on Kenny Smith earlier this year and then challenged him to a fight. I mean, come on, honestly. There's one thing I do know about Kenny is he'd use Golding for target practice, quite frankly. I know Kenny better than that. And so does Golding. Golding just a gobshite, quite frankly. He'd be lucky if he survives one sparring round with Mohammed Ajab, in truth. Don't believe me, just ask Jada Franson. I'm sure she'll put you in the picture. I think she's put many people in the picture about Golding, hasn't she? In truth, credit to her. But yeah, she's another one, hooked on the Christian fundamentalism routine. And this is the point that I'm making, with Golding, is just totally and utterly obsessed. Obsessed with the centre riot, obsessed with Tommy Robinson, obsessed with Christianity, ranting about ethno-nationalism, and then dishing the dirt on people like Kenny Smith for having a swastika on his chest. Well, as far as I'm aware, from what I know, it's not actually a swastika. It's the Gefalb eagle, which means golden eagle in German, with a clutching a swastika. And but I don't know for certain because I've not seen it. That's just what I've been told. It's none of my business, quite frankly, what Kenny had on his chest. I know he's tried to have it removed a few times, albeit unsuccessfully, I've been advised. But that's his business. It's not something, a tattoo that I'd ever have on me, quite frankly. I have runic tattoos, on both arms, and no doubt Golding would be aghast. Oh, look, there's something nativist. He's got something nativist tattooed on his arms. That's your Sivnat for you. That's your typical Christian Sivnat. So anyone who thinks Golding and Britain First, is a nationalist organisation, you're living in cloud cuckoo land with the fairies, quite frankly, and you need to come out of cloud cuckoo land, and one day you will do with an almighty bang, quite frankly, when you realise that all of these pretenders are just that. They're just pretending. They're pretending to be something they're not. And Golding, I think, is a bigger con man than Tommy Robinson, in truth. And do you know the reason why? Because Tommy doesn't pretend to be a nationalist in any way, shape or form. He's quite open about the fact that he hates nationalism and we hate him. That's cool. But Golding, of course, he pretends to be a nationalist, but in actual fact, he is just a right-wing Sivnat. He's certainly the most right-wing of the British Sivnats, but he's a Sivnat, 100%. And this remigration policy is not going to change a single thing. It's just yet more imitation game stunt. So there we go. Anybody who wants to challenge me, no doubt you will do. There's a thing called the comments, and providing you're not abusive and threatening, I have to make this perfectly clear to these people because abuse and threats is what they do par excellence. Far too often, they just prove themselves to be, dragged out of the gutter, quite frankly. Not disciplined in any way, shape or form. But if you want to challenge what I've had to say, then fair enough, that's entirely up to you. It's called free speech, isn't it? But at the end of the day, this is my right to free speech. I'm exercising my right to free speech. And as a nationalist of the last 35 years, bordering now 36 years, I can tell you for a fact that Paul Golding is not a nationalist. Thank you for tuning in. See you soon.